Oh, we are back. We're here. We're live in your ear holes. We're live in front of your eyeballs. The Chaps Chat Cats back on the Hoops Crew Media Network. Our first game recap of 2026. Can't believe it. My name is Jake, and I'm joined in the virtual studio by Sambo. How are you? Oh no, we can't hear you. We just
that's a bad start. That's on me. I muted myself while I closed the window. That's not a good omen. Look, the podcast started about as well as the game on the weekend. If I'm being honest. I think the Cats had their football mute button on. I think we figured out what happened.
Absolutely. We've also got our very own Nick Fury, Mr. Ben. Mr. Ben lurking around in the background here, trying to make sure I don't do any accents that get me cancelled right off the top. You know what I mean? Like
it's always a real fun. It makes the podcast really exciting though. Sitting here wondering if you're about to get cancelled or not.
It's true. You never know if this is going to be, the first podcast and the last podcast of the season.
I feel like Borat is safe. I feel like Borat accents are safe because you're doing an impression of someone else doing an impression. You're not doing a racist impression. You're doing an accurate impression of someone else doing a racist impression.
Wow,
it's a loophole.
It's very nice.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Absolutely true. We've got so many people in the chat. We've got Ben, who got there first. We've got Jackie Mack. We've got Frank Gardner, the Hoops Crew as an entity, saying evening all. And we've got Morris, the legend, in the chat asking what's going on. Well, your main F1 man, Johnny Larkin's not here tonight because he was at the F1s. If anyone's wondering where Johnny the laconic Larkin is, he's in recovery mode after what I can only imagine was an extreme 3-day bender in Melbourne at the Formula Ern. Second Sacha Baron Cohen reference of the pod. So yeah, Johnny's not here tonight, but we're here, so you'll have to make do with us, Twins, Basil. How are you, Sambo? How's your week got on? How's your week started?
See Morris. Sorry, yeah, I'll have to go and join John's exclusive Formula One only coverage. I'm good, Jake. I'm good. My week has been, I don't know what it's day one of the week. What do you mean? The week's just started. Don't throw me like that. I was like, what have I done this week? No, I went to Albury, one of the Twin Cities, for an entirely unsuccessful visit up there. And that pretty much cooked my whole day. And then that brings me to now.
Fantastic. Good stuff. Yeah, mine involved some home DIY. Involved watching a couple of games of soccer. Watched the Welsh Cup semi-final.
Wrong ball. Get out of here.
Yeah, sorry. Carnarvon Town won their Welsh Cup semi-final to reach the final for the first time. So I'm jazzed about that. Found myself half passed out on the couch watching Southampton Fulham FA Cup 5th round. And yeah, just doing some prep for this. And now we're here and ready to jump into the first recap of the season. Really can't believe that we're here.
Are we ready though? So are we really?
We'll soon see. If you'd be so kind, if you're watching, hit that like button on the video. And if you're not following the channel, what the fuck are you doing? Follow on the channel. So yeah, we will recap Cats v Suns. We will cast our votes for players who stood out to us and did other stuff good too. And we'll end the show with an early look ahead to the game against the Fremantle Dockers this weekend. Johnny's F1 Corner was meant to be on here, but it won't be. And as usual, we will have plenty of room for questions and comments from the Discord and chat. So if you've got any questions, queries, or thoughts, chuck them in there. But there's no other place to start, Sambo, than first thanking our Patreon subscribers. I'm still working out the business of how we're going to do the extended shows this year. So yeah, the main thing I want to do is just say thank you to those who are subscribed on Patreon. Still working out the finer points of how to do live shows and then an extended show as well within that stream. But you will get some exclusive coverage this week because I'm going to do putting together some research notes for the first VFL show of the year because Geelong finally released their list for this season, including a couple of lads from up in Albury-Wodonga area, Lavington Panthers, Jack Costello and Jesse Hart. So very exciting to have a couple of lads from the Northeast going on Geelong's development list for the VFL. So yes, the Patreon will get exclusive stuff this week in the form of that. And we will action towards getting the extended shows back up and running. But in the meantime, just a massive thank you to everyone who stuck around over the off season. When we took our break, the patrons were still there funding John's rampant drug habit. All right, let's jump in to the match recap. And Sambo, back by popular demand, or rather back by Ben's demand. I don't know if anyone else was asking for them, but Ben's
pretty popular. So I think if Ben wants it, that counts as popular demand. He's a popular guy.
Popular. It's a popular. Exactly. He's a popular guy. The recaps are back. My intro recaps are back. So we're going to start here. I will recap the game for you in case you've been living under a rock and didn't see Geelong get spanked on the Gold Coast. 7 moniker of friends once exploded with orgasmic delight. At quarter time, AFL bigwigs around the country were frothing over in their pantaloons in much the same way as their pet science project, the Gold Coast Suns, piled on seven goals to Geelong's 2 to lead 43-14 at the first break. The second term saw the Cats stem the bleeding to an extent, but a late Ben Long goal left the visitors trailing by seven goals at halftime. There were absences for the Cats, to be sure. Patrick Dangerfield, Jeremy Cameron, and Tyson Stengel, producers of 152 goals and 69 goal assists in 2025, left gaping holes in the side of Geelong's war machine that proved impossible to fill with a putty of Shannon Neal, Ollie Henry, and Jack Martin. But disregarding those vacancies, there were more pressing absences on the night. Kicks sailed overhead, handballs arrived in the wrong postcode, marks were fumbled, and Geelong's tackling technique at times looked more like Cuddle Party than Krav Maga. Still, second half amendments, regardless of outcome, have been the bread and butter of Geelong for the majority of recorded human history, or at least the last 20 years of it. There was an expectation, at least in CASA CHAPS, of a third term lift. The only ascension, however, occurred in the straining pants of AFL executives as once again the Gold Coast sex machines pounded in seven goals to Geelong's 1 in the third quarter, leaving the margin agape at 79 points with another half hour to play. Of course, thereafter, the Gold Coast's throbbing queue went back in the rack and the Cats scrounged some scoreboard salvation. Ollie Dempsey danced on rainbow roads and plucked stars from the Milky Way en route to a 3-goal burst, while Shannon Neal and Ollie Henry applied thick lipstick to the evening's swine. Jai Clark deserves special praise, missing everything late to preserve Geelong's score at 69. Nice. Opening round certainly wasn't pretty, but it certainly wasn't pretty. Footy is back, and it'll be interesting to see if Geelong are next week. Sambo, your opening statements on the game.
Jesus Christ. How good's footy, eh? That's obviously the opener. Thank God your intros are back, Jake. That made that reliving that match almost bearable. But it was about as bad as I could have imagined it being, to be completely honest. We keep things pretty positive here. But yeah, well done on the intro. You actually made that game sound exciting. And half interesting. So
What's the Gold Coast fans?
Yeah, I bet they had a great old time.
All 30 of them.
Yes. So I don't know. Like, this is a tough one. You know, obviously we've had a bit of a post-mortem in our private chat, and there's certain certain topics that we've covered that we will sort of dig into tonight, and then there's some topics I guess that we won't cover yet. It feels too early days to start sort of tearing into things too much. Like I don't want to sound too lackadaisical and like, oh, everything's good, but like, you know, the numbered rounds haven't even started yet is the fact of the matter. So I guess my overall feeling through the whole game was just, you know, hold your horses, I suppose, a little bit. Things looked pretty bad. I guess we've now seen how bad it can look. So we know now not what we don't want to do. We know what we don't want to see the Cats do at all, ever, in any sort of capacity. So there's a positive. It's always nice to have a floor to start from. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to just clutch at straws just for the sake of talking points, but it really was so un-Geelong-like in so many ways. I suppose the thing I will say is to call back to our preseason sort of launch pod we did with Ben and Paul in as well. We sort of went through all the lines, and if we're going to take any positives, I feel like our coverage of each line, the defense, the midfield, the forward line, and the ruck position, I feel like it played out pretty much how we sort of felt, which was the back line is pretty solid, but they're not going to keep up with an avalanche. You know, they can repel every now and then. They're gonna do their job, but they need a break provided by a bit of upground defense, people stopping the turnovers, stopping that ricochet. And that's basically what we saw. We felt like the midfield was pretty strong. They're not going to blast and absolutely belt the best midfields in the competition, but they're going to be there to do what we need them to do around the contest. And, I mean, statistically, that's true. There's some more quirks there that I'd like to get into, but, like, as far as clearances and all that kind of stuff, the midfield sort of did what you'd expect of them. The forward line was the area that we felt like is just – it's not going to be firing at the moment with the outs we've got, and trying to find our sort of makeup there. And that was on display. And the ruck is what the ruck is. The ruck is going to be a bit of a suck it and see, try some different people, rotate through. So yeah, that was basically what we predicted and what we saw. I just didn't expect it to result in a game like that. So this is a good point here from the chat.
Yeah, Nav from London. To say again, I don't know if I should jump in with, like an accent here, read this in character. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to do Paul Rudd, like, yes, you're from London.
I was going to say, you tell us
like,
what you think a Londoner accent is. You go for it. Like,
no, I definitely won't. I definitely won't. I won't disrespect Nav from London like that. So I'll read it in my accent. When you see the screen, why does it look like there are more opposition players? Then when the opposition gets the ball, they have more players to receive. Then you see our players together in a little cluster. This sort of sounds like
the S word. The S word.
Yeah, the S word. The S word sound. Structure.
Yeah, I think, and a lot of tonight is going to be uncharacteristically Chaps, in that we probably may occasionally talk about the opposition, which is something that we staunchly just do not do. But for everything that we did poorly, I mean, they. I don't think you could have asked for a better performance from them, really, until obviously the fourth quarter when they put the cue in the rack and the steam went out of things a little bit. Overall, like, they were just firing. It did remind me a lot of the last time we saw the Cats play in the second half of the grand final, where like nothing would go right for us, and every little bounce was going right for them, and they just couldn't do any wrong. Every pot shot they took was kind of at least coming close. But the structure of it is huge. Like, that's something that you see when the Cats aren't maybe playing at their best. Our best players are compensating. They're running harder. They're running further. They're trying to cover gaps in the ground, and they're just getting gassed. So you've got people like Atkins just running rings, just trying to catch up. And you saw him literally shouting at other players sometimes, like trying to tell them where they should be. And that just plays into the opposition's hands so much that good players can only be so many places at once. And I thought there was a lot of from early on, there was a lot of hands on hips. There was a lot of sort of people maybe not just not covering when the ball wasn't there. I felt like sometimes when the ball was hot, people were putting in that sort of effort and like being where they needed to be. But then the second efforts were low. I didn't think we had to like lock it in. I don't think we were able to lock it in when we had to. And conversely, they're running their coverage. They're like that sliding doors thing of this player has the ball. This guy's going to make an option over here, and therefore player 3 is going to move into the position where that guy was and just cover those gaps. So they've always got like triangles around the players, both offensively and defensively. That's what you do when there's, when you've got the ball, and when you don't have the ball, it's the same thing. Try and mark up players, try and fill the space where the ball or a player might be running into. And I thought we did it awfully, and I thought they did it exceptionally well. So you're totally right. Like it just looked like they had about double the amount of players, except for when we were in those little clusters. There was times when we were watching and I'd point out and I'd be going, there's 4 of us. There's a loose ball and there's 4 Cats players around it. We need 4 Cats players when it's a hot ball and there's a contest happening and there's other players. When there's a loose ball, one of you get it and the other 3 assume other positions. Someone fall back and be a defensive option. The other 2 break off and try and find space. Like it did look a little bit like some Oz kick level stuff sometimes, of like groups of us chasing it and leaving these huge gaps in our structure that they were able just to basically waltz into and take free marks.
Yeah. It was. I think we said it on the night. We were just like it. I think we said it just nearing half time. Like we like to wait a couple of quarters before we just like make any sort of big statements about it. But like the thing that I think we said just before half time was we just look sloppy. Like it just doesn't look neat. It doesn't look tidy. It doesn't look switched on. It doesn't look connected. The forward line stuff, as we said, like, you can look at that forward line and be like, it was a real experiment sort of thing in depth of saying like, okay, here's a chance. Ollie Henry, here's a game you probably wouldn't have got if everyone was healthy in opening round. Jack Martin, here's a game you probably wouldn't have got in opening round if everyone was healthy. Shannon Neal, you would have been playing, but now you're the spearhead. How do you guys all look when we throw you in? And, from my perspective, those 3 guys, like it wasn't a pass mark for any of those players. But outside of that, there was so much other shit that went poorly as well, and it was poorly executed. And I think you hit on it. A thing that you said was skill execution. That was something that really surprised us. Like I think normally there's a few things you might level at Geelong, some of which we'll get to, around like being scored against from clearance, which was again another big one. Turnovers in the front half leading to scores that the back line will get the blame for, but really it started up the ground. There were times where we were saying, all right, let's see, does this lead to a score? A drop mark or a missed tackle or a missed kick in the front half. Is this going to lead to a score or a scoring chance? And invariably it did. But just the basic skill execution stuff was like really down. Like the handball game stood out to me big time. There was a stat here, like there's no specific stat available for like missed handballs, but like anecdotally, it seemed to us like there were a lot of chains of Geelong possession that were ended or vandalized by like poor handball skills. And there's a stat that I think links into this, and that is that Geelong produced a forward 50 entry from just 16.3% of their possession chains that started in defensive 50. That's a category they finished first in the league in last season, where they converted 28.9% of possession chains that started in back 50 into forward 50 entries. And I think that helps speak to the disconnection on transition. Like Sambo, like we were just missing handballs, like really simple stuff. Like it was sloppy.
Yeah, I felt like we were over kicking and under handballing, as in like in terms of the power and the range. Like every time we kicked it, someone was having to leap off the ground to try and mark it. And when we handballed it, it was going back behind the person on the run. So I think the disposal efficiency statistic is pretty bad. Like, I don't think I don't know. I think it was sub 10 percent different to the Gold Coast. It wasn't as bad as it looked like. And I remember kind of going, oh, it's not, awful. But then when you Jake laid it out, you're like, it's actually the worst. It's in the, totality of a game, the disparity is actually huge. And it was like the worst disparity between a team of the weekend. And so that statistic is already bad, and it's one thing. But I think even the disposals that maybe statistically were an effective disposal, it went to one of our players, it went to the player we were trying to kick it to. They weren't actually advantageous disposals. So it's like, yes, you handballed it, and yes, it went to that player that you were aiming for, but it went about half a step behind him. It's no good to players like Smith, players like Holmes, Bruin, Myers, if you're handballing it to them and they're having to stop their stride. The perfect handball to those guys is the one that goes out half a step in front of them, and they can reach out and take it in their stride. It actually, if they have to reach out a little bit further, it can give them that little oomph, a little bit of extra momentum to carry on with. But it was always the opposite. So it's like I almost wanted to go back and watch the game with a clicker and click every time it was a handball that was not that didn't work. So even if it went to the player, if it's not bang on, if it's not 100% where you would want that handball to go, click it. And I think the stat actually, I think it actually favors us. Like, it sugarcoats it a little bit. It doesn't look that bad, when in actual fact it was like, I don't know. It felt like the majority I feel like 2 in every 3 handballs was just not right. It's not always that it went to an opposition. It wasn't always a turnover. It didn't always go to ground. But it was just like this clunky kind of like, oh, that's not where you want that ball to go. And then, like I said, with the kicking, we were kicking it over each other's heads continuously. The reason I feel comfortable kind of being a bit nitpicky and negative about this stuff is because, in contrast maybe to how some people are feeling, so hopefully, we can all take a little bit of solace in it, is that it is uncharacteristic. This isn't an ongoing problem until it's an ongoing problem. So I'm going to wait another week or two to go, okay, was this Chris Scott?
Chris Scott just entered the chat.
Well, I was just about to reference him. He staunchly wouldn't blame the conditions, and I really respect that. But they are what they are, and I'm not blaming the conditions either. I think had we played, twice as good as that in better conditions, we're still losing that game. We didn't need to be twice as good. We needed to be a whole different team. But I think the condition is maybe what held us back from even just improving a little bit. Like we were saying in the back end, we were sort of like, okay, if we can just see this, this, and this, take that into next week. And obviously we got some goals, but that's not really what we were looking for. We were looking for chains of play, consistent, effective, advantageous disposals that we can link into some physical momentum and also football momentum. And I just don't think we even saw that. And I do think that thanks, Jackie. We're glad you went there. The ground is not fantastic. But the humidity and the heat and all that kind of stuff, I think it is probably what hindered us just from even being able to just put a little bit of respectability back on our game. So there's that. But as I said, I'm not going to completely panic about the skill execution until I see this being, Geelong's a team that can't dispose of the ball effectively, because at the moment we didn't that game at all, but there's no pattern yet.
Yeah, for sure. It's not a pattern until it becomes a pattern. But it was certainly on the night, in an isolated incident, it was pretty bad. Some stats, as Sam mentioned there, Geelong had the lowest disposal efficiency of the weekend, and in fact they were the only team to sit below 70% disposal efficiency out of the 10 teams who played, and they suffered the biggest disposal efficiency deficit of the opening round. There's some other ones on Wheelo ratings as well. Disposals per turnover. Geelong had a turnover every 4.3 disposals. That was the lowest amongst any team on the weekend. They also had 88 turnovers on the weekend. That was 13 more than the next closest team. So it was pretty bad in terms of just the efficiency of how we use the ball. And I think you painted it really well, Sambo, when you're saying like even the effective disposals, a kick that got to your teammate didn't necessarily put them in an advantageous position. It's that like, it's that thin line, isn't it, with statistics? That's why it's still important to watch the games, because one effective kick may not be, two effective kicks aren't as effective as each other. And sometimes we don't necessarily have a measure for that, at least available to us on the public broadcast. Another one that stands out, disposal retention, the percentage of disposals retained by a teammate. Geelong last for the round, 67.4%. So it's like in all of those categories, it matches up with what we were seeing. Like the numbers bear it out. Do you have more thoughts on sort of the efficiency and that sort of thing, or can we talk about some tackling stuff?
Only just the last stat, just to completely harp on it, was just that one that I threw to you, which was like I think of the top 15 players on the ground for disposal efficiency, only 3 of them were Cats. And I think it was Ollie Henry and Zach Guthrie. Beg your pardon, Jack Henry and Zach Guthrie were quite high. Like they were in the top 6, I think, for disposal efficiency. But then for the next like 9 players, there was only one other player, and that was Ollie Dempsey. So, again, flipping that coin, not only were the Cats across the board pretty bad with disposal efficiency, but the Gold Coast were really good at it. Like they had 10 players going at above like 88% or something. Maybe it was 82%. But anyway, they had a lot of players that were going at a really high disposal efficiency. In direct contrast, it's just the perfect storm for an absolute belting. Everything that we were doing poorly, they were basically taking that and going, well, this is how you actually do that well.
And another at the other end of the spectrum, like just kicking efficiency, like not total disposals. The Cats had only 5 players in the top 15 for kicking efficiency. They were O'Shane Mullen, Jack Henry, Ollie Henry, Tom Stewart, and Zach Guthrie. But we also had 6 players go at less than 40% by foot. Gold Coast only had 3 players that went that low. So it was bad. It was not good. But as you said, it was also uncharacteristic. This isn't something we would expect to see from Geelong week in, week out. And I would expect a pretty big turnaround come the next round. But another thing that we expect to see done at a high level for Geelong is their tackling. But I thought this was a bit of a blight on the night, Sambo. The Cats were out-tackled 61-69, which in and of itself it's not a killer deficit, but we got doubled up 7-14 for tackles inside 50, which, as you said, that's like the key marker. If Geelong get out-tackled inside 50, they don't win very many games. But what was maybe like most frustrating to me was that there were players actually in position to make tackles. And this is where you get into the minutiae of like, the kick to a player is effective, but was it advantageous? This is we actually had players working to get in position to make a tackle, but their application was pretty poor. And James Warple in particular, the stats say he had 11 tackles to lead the team, but I thought he was one of many who didn't really actually wrap up that well and had plenty of tackles broken and slipped. I think you said it, Sambo. Like, it's a bit of the cuddle master was the moniker we threw around, but he wasn't alone. It was a bit of a cuddle party in the tackle department for a team that's normally pretty good at sticking them.
And our own Johnny Larkin in the chat says the Suns players jumped in oil before the game. It definitely looked like it. It definitely seemed like it, the way they were able to sort of easily
in this climate.
I'll leave that one. There's so many ways you could take that joke at the moment. The Warple one's really interesting, and as I said to you, he's specifically a player that I don't want to get in on too much, because I was unsure about how much value he brought to the team when the trade happened, and I was still unsure in the preseason. Statistically, I can see it now a little bit after this game, but this one, his performance was one that just didn't match up with the eyeball test at all. Like, I just did not see it that way. If I hadn't gone to the stats, I probably would have been going after him a little bit. And then you look at the stats and go, well, actually, he was statistically one of our top 5 players, probably, and he laid easily the most tackles on the ground, not just for the Cats, and had a few disposals as well, and operated at a relatively high disposal efficiency compared to like some of the other players in a similar role. Even Tom Atkins, he had a higher disposal efficiency than Tom Atkins. So Warple is a strange one for me. I still have to just sort of make sure I'm not on a vendetta against him, because I don't dislike the guy or doubt his footballing skill, but he was one that watching it. So if he had 11 tackles, which I think it says he did, if all those slipped tackles don't count as tackles, then had he been able to lay every tackle, he would have had like 25 tackles, because I would have said when I went to the stats, I thought he was going to have about 6 tackles, and then like all those. So I don't I've actually been Googling what counts as a tackle in the stats. Like, how does it officially become a tackle? And it seems pretty rigorous the way they if the player gets off a legal disposal, it doesn't count as a tackle. So all those tackles that I was seeing that the people were slipping out of, they're not, none of those should be getting racked into the tackle count. So he must have been laying a lot of tackles did not get a great, didn't clock. I didn't clock, I suppose. So that, again, like I said, I've got to be careful. I'm not on some kind of anti-Warple vendetta here, and I'm just blocking out all the good stuff he's doing. But regardless, like, for him to lay 11 tackles and then overall our tackle count is low. It's not great. And again, from the eyeball, putting aside the stats, just going with the eyeball test of watching the game, it just did not look like we were ever in a position to lay a good tackle. Every time we laid a good tackle, it kind of had to be this extreme, we've leapt over them. There's another player on the side waiting to wrap them up, and you sort of push them into, and end up being a 2-on-1 tackle, and you lay into the ground. Most of the time, we were just gut running to try and catch up, and we'd wrap the arms around the waist, or grab a fistful of shirt or something in an ineffective way. Like, I think that goes back to the structure again. We were never in the position we needed to be in before we needed to be there. We were always playing catch up, and it's really hard to put on a effective defensive game if you're playing catch up, if you're not reading ahead of the game and going, okay, they're probably going to do this. This is where we've got to be. And then, that's Geelong at their best. And this was basically Geelong at their worst in that area, was that nobody ever seemed to be, probably bar Tom Stewart. I feel like Tom Stewart was always, he was still doing those things where you're like, he reads the game probably better than anybody else. He wasn't maybe able to effectively marshal other people to read it quite as well on the night.
Yeah, and I think, the other thing that compounded my frustration, I've seen people, praise Warple's performance, at different times of the weekend. I just didn't see it that way. He's not in my votes, didn't even get close. But the thing that compounded it probably for me was just the absolute dickhead move to give away a 50, to give away a free kick that overturned a 50-meter penalty. Like, it was so unnecessary, and it was just another thing where you're like, man, like, what are we doing? There was just some real stupid shit that happened, basically. And I look at some of the overall disposal efficiency for some players, and particularly, as we've already harped on it, particularly by foot, like, Brad Close going at 0% kicking efficiency when he got the ball. Mark Blixarves 20%, Shannon Neal 25%, Sam de Koning 33%, Tom Atkins uncharacteristically low for him the last few seasons, 38.5%, Warple 40%, Max Holmes. This is why we have. I'm going to pull up some receipts here, but we had a segment before the season talking about who are Geelong's current A graders, and we copped a lot of blowback about not having Max Holmes as one of Geelong's current A graders. I'm just talking in isolation about tonight. About the other night. Like, I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I feel very vindicated of saying he isn't an A grade player yet. And part of that was because I keep waiting for him to take that next step in his career where he realizes he's that next nuclear warhead in the arsenal, where it's like, hey, shit isn't going well. I have the power to turn it around, you know? And this is something I said to you, Sambo, was a takeaway for me was this was a little bit of a science experiment in, okay, you don't have Jez, you don't have Danger. Those are two guys who pretty reliably the last few years have been able to do things single-handedly that changed the game in Geelong's favour. What if you don't have either of those two guys? What if you don't have Jez to turn it around with one big quarter of goal kicking or floating around a wing or whatever it might be? What if you don't have Danger for a game to insert into the stoppages to change the course of things? And I'm not trying to be like negative, but I'm just saying in isolation what I saw opening round, I currently don't think there are any players that I have confidence in to take a game and change its course right now. That could change next week. I think we have players who are talented enough to do it. But in terms of players who actually have a track record and showed they can do it, that was probably my most disappointing takeaway, was that no one ever really grabbed the game and gave it a shake. Like, you might point to Ollie Dempsey's last quarter, but for me, the cue was in the rack. Like, the game was over at that point. Like, it was a bit disappointing to me that I thought we had 3 or 4 or even 5 players with the skill sets capable of sort of being launched, but all those missiles that we tried to launch hit the ocean. Like, it was very disappointing from that perspective for me.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was nice to see some of the young guys, which will hopefully, we will get positive at some point, folks. There is some nice things to talk about in the back end, like when we get to votes and stuff. But it was nice. I felt like some of the young guys, like Jai Clark, showed some growth. So there was some growth in that like next crop of really young guys. And then a lot of any of the old guard that were able to turn up, like Stewie, and I guess you'd kind of count like Jack Henry as, like, he's not an old guy, and he's not old, but he's part of the established core, and Atkins as well. Like, those guys were doing what they do, and they did that relatively well. They didn't disgrace themselves by any stretch, I didn't think. But it was sort of that like next crop in the middle there, the guys that aren't, they haven't been there for season upon season upon season. But they're also not rookies. I'd probably put Smith in there as well. And they didn't, I guess, in the off season, what I was hoping for was that they would be the ones that kind of really grabbed things by the scruff of the neck and were sort of forcing some of those, the more established players to pick up their level as well. Or, like, you would want people to be like justifying their spots in the team and kind of getting inspired, I suppose, by the guys that have the potential to be the next superstars, I suppose, not just the next, role players, but that really next level elite footballers. And I feel like that middle crop was the one that probably had progressed the least over the off season that I was hoping for. So, as far as you're, talking about people that can take a game on and change the fate of it, I think, we've probably got 4 or 5 guys, you and I were saying previously, that we think have the skill set too. And what we're hoping is that across this season, we see a couple of those sort of flourish into that role. And we're not just, I don't think we're just being biased here either, as in, like, my favorite player, as I've always said, for the last probably 3 seasons is Tom Atkins, but he's not a player that is going to do a Dangerfield or do a Jezza Cameron. He's not going, he is, I think, possibly the most consistent player in Geelong. His stats just don't dip. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's so consistent in what he does, and what he does allows us to win games. It does help put us in a position to win games, obviously, but the level he's at for this consistency, and I think he's incredibly underrated, but he's maxed out. I don't think he has the potential to have a game where you go, whoa, I didn't see that from him. I didn't see him adding 10 disposals and 4 tackles and 2 goals to his normal statistical output. It's like he's like redlining every game. I think he goes out there and plays every game like it's the grand final, and we are seeing him at max capacity. So it's not. I'm not looking at players like him, but I think I don't think I'm out of turn in saying you and I felt like it was Holmes, it was Smith,
Yep.
Dempsey,
Yep. Shannon Neal,
and was there one more? Or it was just the four?
I think it was just those four off the top of my head.
I mean, honestly,
they had talent.
Honestly, I'm maybe putting Bruin in there now, in a more positive way. In that I wouldn't have even put him in this.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have put him in this conversation previously, but after this week, I'm going. Actually, maybe he is a player that his next level is game winning. So he's that I'm not at all disappointed with what he did on the weekend. So he's not quite in the same conversation because I'm not going, oh, he needs to step up. I think he has stepped up, but he's stepped up in such a way that I'm going, oh, okay, I think I would put him in that group as well. But yeah, for sure, putting him aside for the moment because we will, I imagine, talk about him shortly. Neil, Holmes, Smith, and Dempsey are the players that I don't think they're not letting themselves down. They're not playing at a lower level than they should be, bar this week probably. But yeah, they're the ones that I think I can see a near future where one or two of them are able to have a quarter or two that turns a game on its head. I think they have the potential, the ability, the skill, the footballing mind, the smarts, all that stuff to do it. And maybe we're asking too much in opening round to see it, but I was kind of hoping to see not a victory off one of their shoulders, but like some kind of turnaround in the back half of that game where you go, this player just isn't going to lay down, and go, oh, we're going to accept a 100-point belting. Like we didn't get 100-point belting, but it wasn't through that. Like you said, Ollie Dempsey was probably the closest, but I think most of that came on the back of the space. The game opened up, the pressure went off, and we were actually able to sharpen up a couple of disposals and actually kick it in his general direction to allow him to take a mark. Sure. I don't think he necessarily changed anything in his game or his output to achieve that. It's just everything around him sort of coalesced into a position where he could now sort of shine and have some highlights. But I don't think he grabbed it and ran with it in any particular way.
Yeah, and that's where we talked about too on the night, like the difference between, I think we call it thermostat players and thermometer players, where you've got players that by their performance, you can sort of like the thermometer player for us is Geelong playing well, then that player will have a good game. The opposite is the player who plays well, therefore Geelong has a good game. And that's that difference. And those four players that you just talked about, Neil, Dempsey, Holmes, Smith, are those players that, like, if Tom Atkins is the one, if it's the work of people like Tom Atkins to build the launching pad, then it's like the Jeremy Camerons, the Patrick Dangerfields, even the Tyson Stengels to an extent, the Ollie Dempseys, the Max Holmes. It's their job to use that launching pad that's been laid to launch, to fire the shots that get you the wins. Like those guys, those super role player guys can only do so much. They can get you in position to take sort of the match winning shot. They're not going to take it themselves. And so that was a bit disappointing. As you said, there was no necessarily an expectation that we see one of those guys actually get us over the line, but it just would have been nice to see, I don't know, just a bit more. And it's a bit frustrating, particularly when they're the players now who are transitioning to be on the big money. Particularly look at Holmes and Smith, and in future, it will be Dempsey who gets that money. Shannon Neal will be hoping that he will eventually get that money. But I thought there was a great indication of it, Sambo. Like a moment that stood out to me was Shannon Neal actually leading out and taking mark. We had just said, why does he always want it kicked over his head? He's always playing behind his defender, and he's like, kick it over me, kick it over me. It's like, lead up at the football. And then next minute, he led up at the football, took a mark, sort of would have had to kick from the paint of 50. And he went back and just did not want to take the shot and tried to square it up for someone else. And it ended up, I think, in a turnover. And you had the point. You said, wait a minute, he sunk a shot from 50 in the grand final. And I remember we talked about on that Saturday, on grand final day, saying, I hope that moment sticks with him. The grand final loss sucks, but I hope that moment of going back on a big stage and slotting the ball from deep sticks with him. But we're really in that phase where he's yet to learn again. Like, I think to an extent, all these guys we're talking about are trying to learn how to play their best footy and execute their skills best and have confidence to execute in the highest moments. We all know they're capable, but it's that next thing of them executing it. And I just thought that was a moment that typified what we're talking about. It was a moment we all know Shannon Neal can make that kick, and he went back and passed on the opportunity.
Yeah, and I remember staunchly defending him when he's kicking. Like, his goal efficiency was pretty low, but he was still having cracks. And I remember saying I would actually rather this from a young up and coming forward, that he is kind of going, I am him, I can convert, I will, and missing it. Like, you kind of need those players in a team, especially a team like Geelong that is so generous in the way we share the ball around in the forward half. And so I kind of liked that he was the player. I remember saying to you and to John, and you guys saying it as well, that, like, I'm not mad at that miss. I'm not mad that he tried that from there, that he backed himself. So it was, not only was it a little disappointing, it was actually somewhat uncharacteristic. It didn't necessarily show a lack of growth from Neal. It showed an uncharacteristic moment of doubt. I thought he's a player that his actual efficacy isn't yet 100%, but generally he backs himself to try. And the fact that he didn't try was actually, it felt almost like a little step backwards to, like, oh, is this your debut? You just step out and you feel like, I wouldn't have been mad if he'd taken that and missed it. I would have gone, well, someone's got to do something at that point. And the fact that nobody wanted to be the guy to do something was probably more disappointing than 6 wild shots that could have been converted,
Yeah. Even like I was waiting for the Sean Manor stuff. He's not in that tier where I think a little bit like Atkins, where I don't know that Sean Manor has that much more growing left to do. I think he's already a pretty bloody good player for the Cats, but I don't know if he's got levels yet to ascend in his game. But I just kept waiting for that moment where Sean Manor had a few minutes where he had 2 or 3 shots at goal, all of them wild, but maybe one, found the big sticks, and you were like, oh, that could be a spark. It was just sort of a weird game where it just sort of went by. We were sloppy and just lacked execution, lacked a bit of confidence. It was a very, very strange game. Very, I think it's fair to say quite un-Geelong-like. Now, I know we want to get to votes for players who did good stuff. What was it? What is our vote system called again? Players who stood out to us and did other stuff good too. Don't know how I forgot that. But before we get to that, Sambo, I would actually like, if producer Ben is floating around behind the scenes, maybe drop a few key discussion points that the chaps have, the chat has thrown up. If there's any that you think
thrown up.
All right, here we go. Yeah. All right, so this vomit talk brought to you by Quickies. All right, so Jackie Mack says, thoughts on hiding Ollie Dempsey up in a forward line most of the night? The minute he was moved up, we actually looked better. Sambo, Ollie Dempsey, what did you make of his game? Would you have liked to see him used differently? Where are we at?
To reference the great man Chris Scott again, in his post-game presser, he said that they were like, some of the big outs were pretty late notice, and that they tried a lot of things, and he said, and evidently they didn't work. So as far as the way he was used on the night, I don't necessarily have a great degree of negativity about it, because he's such a versatile player, and the Achilles heel of having a versatile player is it can be hard to lock down where you're going to play them. So they're good everywhere, but where are they most useful? So as far as the way he's used on the night, I don't think it was I don't think it was any particular failure. Like I wouldn't point to that as being the thing that let us down earlier in the game. But I love him. I love him being up forward. I love the way he can convert. But likewise, I love it when he's on the wing. I love him getting, when he gets space and he can do those overlap runs that he did so well against Brisbane in the not grand final, like the previous final we played against them, where he was just able to outleg them, not even with any degree of speed, but just his coverage to be effective on the wing, and then duck in behind and end up as the deepest forward all of a sudden after having been on the wing at the centre bounce. Like I love him, doing that. And then also we saw him played on ball, which forgive me, but I don't think we really saw that on the night, right? Did he ever go on ball?
Not that I saw. No, someone might be able to dispute that, but I don't remember because I was sort of waiting for it to happen. I was going to see if I could find the stats of centre bounce attendance.
I see.
But it's going to take me too long to find it. But
so basically, I think in this specific scenario where we're really lacking up forward, I think maybe that's why we didn't really see him in the middle, and using him up forward does seem like a bit of a no-brainer. So yeah, I think he can be effective anywhere he is, and at the moment that is probably where we're lacking the most. But that being said as well, like I wouldn't like to lay the blame entirely on the forward line and their ability to convert goals, because I think our entries into 50 just weren't advantageous. They weren't where we needed them to be a lot of the time. So, and then our ability to hold it in there wasn't, I wouldn't necessarily say that's something of Ollie Dempsey's, one of his strengths, his tackling and his defensive work. So I feel like that's probably one of the things we were lacking even more in the forward line, was not necessarily taking a mark and kicking a goal, but when the ball comes to ground, lock it in there and try and have a double effort somewhere. So I don't necessarily know that he would have fixed that anyway. I don't know if that's centre bounce attendance 0 for Ollie Dempsey. I don't know if that's answered the question, Jackie, but I love him up forward, but the asterisk is I love him everywhere on the ground. I think he's super effective.
I was just thinking too about, you just mentioned the tackle pressure inside forward 50, which is a spot we got, smacked in really 7 to 14.
12 being our benchmark normally.
Yeah, exactly. So well off at nearly half a dozen short of our normal efforts. Like Tyson Stengel averages 1.5 tackles inside 50 per game last season. Jeremy Cameron was one of the better forwards for tackling inside 50. So like we talk about the missing their scoring and their marking, but the defensive pressure as well. Like that's a big difference too.
And danger, like the chaos. He might not lay a clean tackle inside 50, but he's going to lay some pressure acts and just bring that element of chaos to disrupt the defense.
Yeah. Another stray stat that I just saw while I was looking through the sheet was 0 running bounces for Max Holmes. In fact, Geelong only had 4 on the night, 3 to Tanner Bruin and 1 to Tom Stewart. The Suns had a boatload of them, 5 to Daniel Rioli, 2 for Leonardo Lombard, 1 each to Hewland, Powell, Petrarca, Noble, Graham, and Anderson. So, like, we really lacked some run too. Shadu from the chat says, I think the Gold Coast looked the sharpest of anyone in the round as well. Now, I confess I only watched this game and the Sydney game. I don't know if you caught the Doggies match or the Pies Saints game, Sambo, but of the 4 teams I saw, I would agree Suns probably looked the sharpest.
Yeah, I watched. What was the opening round? Carlton and you just said Sydney.
Carlton Swans.
I watched the first half of that and remember that football sucks when it doesn't have the Cats in it, so I didn't watch it. I didn't watch anymore. I think I had made a bit of a promise to myself that I was going to watch more football this year, but I don't think it's going to
happen. All right, here we go. Icebreaker says, Legends, what happened? Gold Coast too good or Geelong not up to it? Jeremy Cameron is your biggest out. Ford did not function well without him. I think it's a combo of everything. Icebreaker, wouldn't you agree, Sambo? It was like Gold Coast were on fire, Geelong was off it. JC is a big out.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked last year, or maybe even the year before, when I think it was you that coined it, Jake, the Jenga player, the player that you take out. You know, you can cover a lot of losses, but who's the Jenga piece that you take out of a team, and the team falls apart? I don't know if we came up with a definitive answer on who we thought Geelong's Jenga piece was, but I think it may have been Jeremy Cameron. I think that was the
Pretty
player that we
close.
actually pulled, because we said it once upon a time. It was Tom Stewart, and then we had so many Tom Stewart outs through injury and that big suspension and yada 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 that we kind of got a bit immune to it, that we had to just figure out how to be a team without Tom Stewart in there. And then we got some, Sam De Koning obviously does some Tom Stewart like things, Jack Henry, Zach Guthrie. So we've kind of got this sort of guard around him that can step up in various moments when they needed. But Jeremy Cameron, is that player that I don't think we have a like for like. But I mean, I don't think there's a like for like in competition. Like, I don't think there's another forward like Jeremy Cameron, in my personal opinion. So yeah, I think he is probably the biggest out in the team. Looking back at those players we were just talking about, Max Holmes and Bailey Smith, I would like them to get to the point where they could put their hand up and say, actually, I think I'm the biggest out. Like, I would love if they were providing the kind of the sort of the benefit, the cost benefit of to the level where you could go, oh shit, Max Holmes is out. Oh no, Bailey Smith's out. What are we going to do? Like, obviously that would be an awful feeling, but like I would like them to have that kind of aura, to be occupying that space. But I agree. I think Jeremy Cameron's the biggest out still. I think we've got a forward line that can function to a degree without Cameron, but that forward line probably needs to include Stengel and Dangerfield. So not only is he our biggest out, but it's compounded by the fact that we were missing those guys as well. Gold Coast probably were just too good as well. As I said, I think we could have played twice as well and still lost that game by a handy margin. I think if we played our best, we probably could have won it, because that's just my blind bias. But I don't think we could have obliterated them in that scenario. And they looked just incredibly. We talked about the structure. Our structure was bad. Their structure was on. Our execution was bad. Their execution was on. And that's probably the two biggest ones. They had individual players that operated really highly. We had individual players that didn't operate highly. But I think the structure off ball and then just the ability to execute simple fundamentals, I think they're just the two biggest differences between the team. One team kicked and handballed really well. One team kicked and handballed really poorly. One team provided option and depth and width to their structure offensively, and then provided coverage and support defensively. The other team didn't, and one of those teams got belted. And footy doesn't make sense. Yeah. Footy's weird, but that was one of those nights where footy made 100% total sense.
Yeah. Just another little stat that stuck out to me. You're talking again about efficiency and kicking and all that sort of thing. Lawson Humphreys went at 62.5% by foot. That was down from 76.5% last year. And he was down just a tick under 10% on his disposal average as well. So he was certainly a player who his impact was much reduced. And his kick to handball ratio is an interesting one, Sambo. So I don't know if this came from them putting more pressure on him and him not having time to kick, but his splits across his first two seasons in the AFL, in 2024, he averaged 12.5 kicks to 4.5 handballs. Last year, it was 12.5 kicks to 3.8 handballs. On Friday night, it was 8 kicks, 8 handballs. So that is a vastly different game from Lawson Humphreys, and you can't help but think that teams are putting in thought as to how to impact a guy like him who uses the football so well off both sides. Ocker O'Keefe, Gary 6307. Not Ocker O'Keefe, Gary 6306. Similar but different. Our forward line was packed with players who didn't have a clue how to play like a forward. Not one of them got out in space. I think this is a bit typified by Neil, right, Sambo? Like, we didn't have anyone really providing great leads into space for most of the game. And maybe when we didn't have anyone kicking to it.
Yeah, I mean, chicken and the egg maybe, but I do think that that's one of the problems that is actually, it's one of the few problems in this game that I would maybe put into the pattern column, that I think we saw this many times last year, where I don't know why we don't kick short to a lead more often. Is it that the forwards aren't making those leads, or is it that they're not getting those disposals, so they're leading in other directions? Most of the time, our deliveries inside 50 are banged from a somewhat central position into the square onto someone's head, close, maybe 25 out at most. And it's either a mark and we get a shot at goal, or it comes to ground it's not deep enough into their defensive 50 that we can sort of swarm and lock it in and get a scrappy goal off the ground. And it's also not shallow enough into the 50 that we can run and take a leading mark and have a shot from 45, 50 out. I don't know why. Jai Clark's done it maybe twice now. I think he did it on the night as well, and then in the preseason game he did probably the best forward 50 delivery I've seen from Geelong. Definitely this year, but possibly last year, where he did a bit of a sidestep, took it into space, kicked it really almost too low. I think it was Manor was in the preseason game that took the mark, and he had to get almost too low. But it's harder to defend a ball that's slightly too low than one that's slightly too high. So I would rather that. I would rather it come in sort of, burning the grass and be able to get down and take a mark in front. If the forward positioning is correct, you can take a mark in that position. The defender usually has to pull off some amazing round the body spoil, a la Sam de Koning, to do anything about it. And more often than not, it'll be a mark, or they'll give away a free out of desperation. So I don't know why we don't do that. We sometimes do the cut back across, run into the pocket, and then cut back shallow, but very rarely. I would say it's 75% of the time we kick it long as we can after someone's taken it from a clearance, and then the other 25% of the time is cutbacks, and it's basically 0% that we ever do a short kick to a running lead. So I don't want to whole cloth just blame the forwards, because it could be that this is intentional. We're trying to work on something. The team has, some kind of instruction, the way we're formed up, the way we're trying to do it. Maybe we are trying to kick it deeper to be able to lock it in, and we're just failing to lock it in. And also it could just be the mentality of those disposing it and getting into the 50 is such that they're not kicking it to those leads. The leads are being made and they're not being used. So it's hard to blame any one particular player or one particular position, but I agree that that's what the result is. The result is a completely dysfunctional forward line, and I just don't know why we don't see those kinds of marks happening, or even attempted marks.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I don't even think we.
Comments? Oh, yeah, here we go. Yeah, no, this is a good point from Frank Gardner, 89. Quickly skipped over the ruck issues, fellas. Blitz looked poor. SDK not much better in the ruck. I mean, we're on record on this podcast. We fucking hate playing SDK in the ruck. It's shit, and we would like to not see it. Are we still just holding out for Conway? Think Edwards would have been a good run in retrospect. Was Reece Stanley injured? I'm assuming he was. And therefore not picked. I don't know if anyone in the chat has that. I don't actually remember seeing whether or why he was left out. The Blixarves thing, I just looked up. Jared Witts, who had 52 hitouts to Blix's 18 on the night. Jared Witts is 208 centimeters. Mark Blixarves is 198. So he's giving up 10 centimeters in the ruck. I would guess he's probably giving up a bit of weight there as well. Yeah, it's not ideal. It's not ideal. In an ideal world, Toby Conway would be fit and healthy and not, cursed by injury. It's horrible. It's horrific. It's one of those things that as someone, you know, and I think Frank, from memory, with interacting with you on Twitter, maybe, like, I think you probably watch a fair bit of VFL footy as well. Like, as someone who watches all the VFL games, it's cruel having seen Toby Conway play, you know, more than most, like what that kid could be if he was healthy. Like, to have a solution so close and yet so far away it's absolutely brutal. And as each year goes by, I lose more and more hope that we'll ever see that come to fruition. So, I don't have any expectation of Toby Conway to play much AFL footy this season. I think best case scenario, he gets healthy in the back half of the year and finishes the season healthy, and he gets a healthy run into 2027, because pretty much I think every season he's been at the club, it's been like interrupted off season, interrupted end to one year and an interrupted start to the next one. So yeah, he doesn't really figure into my plans for this year. Mitch Edwards, extremely raw. Like, I know there's been a lot of hype. Geelong have really talked him up, but if anyone watches the NFL, it's like when an NFL team goes in and the starting quarterback tears their ACL in training camp, and they're like, oh, but we feel really good about our second string QB. Like, you know, the 21-year-old guy we just drafted from like West Michigan, or like the 37-year-old journeyman who's played for 14 clubs. And they're like, we feel good about our chances. Like, I sort of feel like that with Mitch Edwards. It felt like a bit of state propaganda of like, this kid, he could be a solution. Like, I'm not saying he can't be long-term, but like, I feel like he's played like 10 VFL games. And if you look at the track record of Geelong and how they pick guys, we talked about this with Polkinghorne, Sam, that they back the people who have credit in the bank. That's why Ollie Henry got to go instead of Polkinghorne. That's why Jack Martin got to go instead of Polkinghorne. It's like, these guys have played a bunch of games. I don't know what your thoughts are on the ruck, Sam, but I think the best case scenario for the Cats, I mean, best case scenario would be Toby Conway gets healthy, Mitch Edwards takes a remarkable leap forward. But realistically, best case scenario is Reece Stanley is healthy most of the year and you can use him when you want him.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that the near miss injury to Neil during a ruck contest, whether Geelong admit it fully or not, I think has changed our plans. Like, I do think we would have seen more Neil swinging into the ruck when, like, and I think that really spooked them, which I think is rightfully so. You know, we're already down our stocks in the forward line as well. So I think that's another part that we maybe didn't address at all, is the fact that I think the plan would have been to have Neil in there. This is wild. Okay. Okay. Anyway, just looking at the comments.
We'll address that one in a second.
We'll just in a moment. But I think the reason we maybe didn't talk about the ruck, and I'm glad it was brought up, so thanks for the comment, because we mentioned it and then didn't talk about it at all. But part of the reason is that it's been going on for so long, and the Cats have turned not having a full-fledged ruckman into an art form. Essentially, we've structured the way we do centre bounce. Sorry, there's no centre bounce anymore. Centre uppies, and around the ground uppies also, is structured to be advantageous if we win the hit out. But also, it's almost like plan A is to not win the hit out and be able to turn that into something. Like, I think we can look at the ruck and go, yeah, we got belted up in hitouts, but we won the clearances. We won total clearances. We won centre clearances, and we only lost stoppage clearances by 1. So we're losing hitouts, but we're turning those lost hitouts into clearances. So I think you've got to then turn around and look. We're back talking about the disposal efficiency. Yay. We turned our hitouts and their hitouts into our advantage. We got a clearance, and the clearance was fucking shit. You know, as I said, if we're looking at overall disposal efficiency, 15 of top 15 players for disposal efficiency, 3 of them were Cats, none of them were midfielders. So, like, that's, you know, I think that sums up. I'd love to have a ruckman. I'd love to be able to put a dominant elite ruckman into this situation, have us go, oh wow, we're actually winning the hitouts. let's go. That would be liberating. But at the moment, it's, I think it's that's why we harped on at it, because it's not necessarily where my focus is at. Because we won a premiership without an elite ruckman, essentially. No hate on Stanley. I love Stanley, but yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah, you've got to look at some of the stats, the facts set in stone sometimes, and it's going to be interesting to see how Geelong continue to adapt around the centre uppies, Sam, and the what did you call them, around the ground uppies? Was that the other ones? The stoppage uppies, centre uppies, and the stoppage uppies. Hey, if they're going to fucking change rules, we're going to change lingo. And you coined centre uppies, and I think that's what we're rolling with, the centre uppies. They asked for this. They started it.
There's a response. It's just...
Yeah. To quote the great Pete Postlethwaite from Clash of the Titans, one day someone's going to have to make a stand. And you just did it.
If I had $1 for every time someone quoted Pete Postlethwaite from Clash of the Titans, I'd have $1.
Ripper movie though. I actually enjoyed that.
Peak nostalgia.
Outside of Sam Worthington.
I feel like you're stalling here not to address this comment floating in the bottom of the screen.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were saying I was stalling because I didn't want to discuss my mid 2010s Gemma Arterton fandom or something.
I would never think you didn't want to discuss that.
The Hoops Crew throws up this, and producer Ben, he's a lot of things. Very hardworking, very diligent, very talented person, but also absolutely terrific rage baiter as well. Just flown up a stat that says, and I need to preface this stat from the live chat poll with this soundbite before we talk about it.
We're entitled to their sexual proclivities.
But the stat is this: 53% of the live chat feels that Brad Close is no longer in our best 23. Look, I know he had a rough night against the Suns, Sambo. Say no more. We get it. I'm not going to sit here and defend his performance on the night, but yeah, I mean, shit's getting serious. Yeah, with the Brad Close wearing the goat horns here over the last 2 seasons. Give us your thoughts, Sambo. Where are you at on Brad Close?
I mean, I think Ben laid out the thoughts on Brad Close tremendously well in the preseason episode that we did, where he laid out all the reasons why Brad Close is underappreciated, and I still think that all holds true. If we're going to drop everyone who had a bad night against the Gold Coast, then we're going to have very, very few players. I'm not holding that game against him, and I just don't think I don't personally think he's put in enough evidence to say he's not in the best. It maybe comes from everybody expecting. I don't know. Maybe it comes from everybody expecting all players to be elite. Tom Atkins is another player that I feel like has been doing what he's doing for season upon season, and he's only just maybe last year started to get some appreciation for he actually does do things for the team. Players can have dips in form, so we'll see. I guess I'm just going to put a pin in it, put my bias back in check. Just on the opposite of the Warple, I don't want to jump on Warple just because of my biases, and I don't want to necessarily completely defend Brad Close just because of my biases. But I don't think I'm not making a call in our best 23 for at least 3 to 4 weeks. Give us a month and let's see how he's going. Everybody has such a bad night. I in no way was pointing at Brad Close to say that's the guy that lost us the game, personally.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. It's a topic that's picked up steam for a while now. He had such an exceptional 2022 when we won the flag, averaging 15 touches a game, nearly 16 touches a game, a goal a game, nearly 4 tackles per game. Some of those numbers have dropped. like the last couple of seasons, like the disposals have dropped season on season. Last year it was 12.5 disposals per game, 0.73 goals per game. He definitely had a down year with his goal kicking. Tackling was a career low in terms of his season. The two lowest seasons of his career in average tackles per game have been 2025 and 2024. But something that was up last year to a career high was his goal assists. He had 30 goal assists last year. So I think I'm willing to cut the chat, not some slack. I mean, as you know, the Cattleman said, you know, people are entitled to their sexual proclivities. But what I would say is I can understand if you're stacking up what you feel like is the oppositional case to Brad Close being in the best 23. It would be, hey, look at the slide in this, look at the slide in that. He didn't have a tackle on the night, blah, blah, blah. But as you said, I think we need to really look at maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks of this season. Bussy Sniffer says he still wants to buy his golf merch. Like I think that, you know, it's just one of those things that I think it's fine to give it a bit of time. He has been such a crucial player for so long. His ability to be available. Like, I think we counted the stats the other day in terms of the amount of games he's played of possible matches available. You know, like last year he played 26 games, 25 games the year before, 21 games the year before that, 25 before that. Like, he's been so available for the Cats. And I think he will come good. I think, to be honest, 24-25, the 2 seasons since Sean Mannor's been in the team, I think Sean Manor does some things in this team that Brad Close used to do on his own. Like, it's sort of like the idea that if Tom Atkins' tackle count drops this year, is that because Tom Atkins is having a shit year, or is it because we brought in James Warple or George Stevens comes in and lays some more tackles? Like, there are only so many tackles to go around. I'd give a little bit of that sort of suspicion to Brad Close's performance. There are other players now that play similar roles to him. I think he's in the best 23, but I would say he's closer to me to being a question mark than ever before. That's still not real close, but he's closer. That's where I sit on it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you've laid it out well. I mean, I don't think you have to go that far back to where his role hadn't yet been defined either. Like, I guess maybe that's why, you know, we're talking about the players with credits in the bank. Like, I remember him being rolled all around the ground. Maybe maybe in the first year that we started potting. And I'm like, maybe this is some kind of erasure or like rewriting history a bit. But I remember games where he was like playing half back, and really like hadn't yet found, like, I remember having these conversations of where is his best spot? Like, why is he like rolling around the ground this way? And then he just happened to find his spot, and he was doing something that no one else was doing. And like last year, his goal assists went up. Graham Myers' goal assists went down. Like, there is ebb and flow, like you're saying. Players are required to do different things. Going back to the Ollie Dempsey thing, he's a versatile player. Where is his best position? And he can't, if we put him up forward, we can't expect him to have as many disposals. We can't look at him and go, oh, his disposal count's down. Oh, no. And if we drop him back onto the wing, we can't look at him and go, oh, he's not kicking 5 goals every game. Oh, no. Like, it's, I guess there's ebb and flow with positions, and there's ebb and flow with players, who's bringing what. I am in no way arguing with the fact that Brad Close had an awful night. I'm in no way arguing with that, but just most players did. And, we knew as soon as it came over the radio when we were driving to watch the game that Brad Close was in the short sleeves. I think that's why it was such a peace. We were so at peace with that game watching it. There was barely a moment of aggression or depression. I think just because we knew from the moment we heard he was in short sleeves, we're like, well, we're in for a rough night, guys. So, that's just the lesson is tattoo some sleeves on that man. So even when he's in short sleeves, he's still got the sleeves.
Sleeve up.
Tattoo some hoops around him.
Hey, if as far as Brad Close's sleeves are concerned, if it's not on, it's not on. You
Right.
know, if it's not on, it's not on. Solid advice. I was just having a look too, guys. Like, let's not forget that we're only 4 games removed from a qualifying final against the Lions, in which he had 18 touches, 1 goal, 5 tackles, and 2 goal assists. Like, let's just see where we're at. Like, were we saying that he wasn't in the best 23 there 4 games of football ago? Maybe just wait and see a little bit.
Yeah. I'm dropping him before other players, but there's a handful of players I'm definitely dropping before Brad Close.
Did one of them used to play for Hawthorn?
I said I'm not getting on a vendetta, Jake. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. No. All right. Fair enough. Yeah. The oldie James Warple cuddle party. Coming to you in 2026. No, anyway, let's get on with it. Let's do the votes. The chat's been great. We need to do votes though. Which are our votes for players who stood out to us and did other stuff good too. This was Sam came
and
up
with
this name. It's a very
and I'm adding to it.
I like it a lot.
I'm adding to it for tonight. It's the players that stood out to us and did other good stuff too and shit the bed the least.
Okay. All right, let me just adjust the banner.
Thank you.
And shit the bed the least.
Yeah.
I think it'll fit on a medal. All right, here we go. So, players who stood out to us and did other stuff good too and shit the bed the least. All right, I will let you. You can lead off here, Sambo. Do you want to like alternate? We both do our 1 vote. We both do our 2 vote. We both do our 3 vote.
Yeah. All right. Let's do it that way. I'm leading off.
We'll have to go for your 1 vote.
Well, after saying that I didn't think it was that impressive because the gas had gone out of it, and it was mostly because of other elements around it, I am giving my 1 vote to Ollie Dempsey. Just to a bit of redemption for myself. I feel like I was sounding really negative on him about that. I wasn't at all negative with what he did in that final quarter. I was just I guess the scenario around it wasn't maybe ideal. But yeah, I mean, it was great. Like of a game with very few highlights. It was really nice to see him having fun. Now that's something I didn't get into. I'd love to maybe put a pin in that and like revisit that in a month's time. Is enjoying football. In the pre-season launch pod, the thing I wanted to see was some players having fun playing football. Last year got a little bit too serious, a little bit too narky. Everyone was having to go at the media, having to go at so I wanted this. I wanted to see some players having a good time out there. Obviously, this is a really bad scenario too, and that's why I'm putting a pin in it. I don't expect many people to be having fun in an environment like that, but. That being said, it was nice to see Ollie Dempsey doing Ollie Dempsey things and having fun. Like he had a smile on his face. The game was absolutely dog shit, but he was still enjoying showing off and doing some good stuff. So, yeah, in a pretty torrid night where we couldn't buy a goal, I feel like I have to honour the guy that got 4 of them.
Yeah. Oh, please, some standing ovation for wordplay there. I love it. Put your applause emojis in the chat. I am going my 1 vote to Connor O'Sullivan. There are a few players who could have got my 1 vote, but he's the one who gets it. The reason being, I thought he played a really good game of footy for a young player in a side that was being mauled further up the ground in terms of how we were defending space and the back line having to cope with a lot. He had 18 touches, 5 marks, 3 tackles. In the advanced stats, something that I liked about him was fairly decent disposal efficiency. In fact, he was the 6th best on the team or 7th best on the team. He faced 6 contested defensive one-on-ones, highest in the game. He lost just 1 of them. I thought Connor O'Sullivan was really good. I was just going to see if I could bring up his spoils as well, because I feel like he had at least 1 really good. He had 5 equal first on the team with Jack Henry and Mark Blixarve. So, yeah, I'm going Connor O'Sullivan. Could have been a lot worse. And he stood up, I thought, pretty proudly. Do we want a snake here? I'll give you my two.
Sure.
All right, I'm going Tom Atkins. I'm going Tom Atkins with my 2 votes. He had 26 disposals, 13 by foot, 13 by hand, 3 marks, 6 tackles, 6 clearances. I was just trying to have a look for his disposal efficiency. Was down in that category.
57 or something.
57 point. Yeah, like it's down. I'd like it to be a little bit higher. It was higher last year, but you know what else? 4 free kicks, 4, none conceded, and a team high 16 contested possessions. I thought Tom Atkins once again was very, very, very good for Geelong, and 2 clangers on the night. It's pretty decent. I thought Tom Atkins was our second best player on the ground. So yeah, 2 votes for me. What about you?
Yeah, I went Tom Atkins in the end. I wrestled with some of my votes, to be honest. So maybe, yeah, I won't go into Tom Atkins anymore because you've already done it. Maybe before we snake with the 3, I will just probably my honourable mention is Tom Stewart. I think also probably Connor O'Sullivan and Jack Henry also did really well. But Tom Stewart did pretty well for an old fella, like 26 disposals, I think it was, and eight intercepts. Yeah, like he was a player that I don't think it was like in any way his best game ever. He wasn't operating at career best, but I don't think he was one of probably only 4 or 5 players that didn't have awful nights. Like I thought he did. If he did that in a winning side, you would feel like that part of the win was contributed to by him. Does that make sense? Like it felt like he was maybe floating. He was floating separate to the result a little bit. I thought his output was perfect. That was exactly what we want from Tom Stewart. So yeah, he was almost could have been my 1 or my 2, to be honest. But my 3 is Tanner Bruin. Yeah, it was electric. It was so heartwarming to see, to have followed that story with such, I don't want to get into it obviously, but just following his story with such trepidation of like, what's going to come to light here? What is this scenario? As I try to do with all of these stories, you don't want to form opinions based on bias. I didn't want to be someone who was sitting here going, "Oh, it's him, ostracize him." What an awful dude. I also didn't want to sit here going like, it's trumped up, blah blah blah. Like, I didn't want to. I was doing my absolute best to avoid any kind of bias here. Yeah, just let it happen. And I don't think I realized until the night how invested I still was in spite of that, in spite of not having opinions and not commenting on it and staunchly avoiding bringing it up or mentioning it in any kind of sort of platform. It was so good. It was so good to see him come out and look like just such an electric footballer. And he did it in such a way that it didn't necessarily look like he was operating at capacity like we were talking about earlier. I think his game alluded to a much higher ceiling, that this is his first game back after a massive break. And he was the shining star in a pretty black night. So I didn't, maybe I didn't touch on the stats and stuff. Maybe you want to bring up some more statistical evidence of it, but just from an emotional and inspirational standpoint, I was so happy for him. So very impressed with how he was able to come out and perform after such adversity and then against such a different kind of adversity on the night.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. We can look at him. That is the highest disposals in a game in his career. He's never gone past 27. 27 was his previous best, which was back in round 4, 2024 against Hawthorn. So like right off the bat, there you go. There's a new career high for him, 31 touches and 2 goal assists, couple of clearances, 5 marks. I liked this different role for him. He gathered 20 uncontested possessions, and I liked this idea of him being like a bit of a distributor from behind the play. Like, I think I've talked about it ad nauseum, so sorry to bring it up again, but they did this thing with Jai Clark in the VFL last year where they played him off half back to start games. Quarter 1, he would play in the back line. And then over the next 3 quarters, they would bring him further, up the ground or down the ground, however that works, into the midfield, essentially. And it was like it reset how Jai Clark looked at a footy field, like the decisions he made, how he executed his disposal skills, just the way he saw play and his involvement in it seemed really changed. And I think you've seen that stick with him from last year to this year. I thought it's a similar thing for Tanner Bruin, a player we used to criticize for doing too much, like, had to weave this way, this way, and then kick it, 20 meters down the ground, but 30 meters up in the air. I thought he was much more clinical and much more assured and a much more sort of a calm kind of presence for Geelong on a night where a lot of people were the exact opposite. So, yeah, 31 disposals. And like I said, a couple of goal assists too. I thought he looked really, really good. And it's funny, isn't it? You have something maybe that you love, taken away from you for 12 months, or you're out of doing something that you love for 12 months. He looks like a player who maybe has had to face the prospect of never playing football again. And that has reaffirmed for him just how much he loves it. I thought he was a player that he looked extremely fit. I think he looked as fit as he's looked in his whole time at the Cats. He ran out the game probably the best of just about anyone. So just a fucking great way to start the season for him. And yeah, it was absolutely my 3-vote getter.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we're probably just about cooked here. We've been going for an hour and a half. I don't know what you were thinking, but
Yeah.
I realized we didn't talk about Jai Clark. I don't know if you had many thoughts, but he's a player we've talked about in the preseason, in the right before, on the eve of the season. We talked about him. I still don't know. I guess he's in a little bit of a similar situation to Warple in terms of, I know what he can do. I don't know how that works. I don't know where that fits and how how he slots in and how the team operates around him. But I would say that this is probably the closest I've been to going, oh, okay, like he can do some stuff. Like some of the stuff that he was able to do, I was really impressed with. I think he still looked a little bit like a dog chasing a car sometimes, where his effort was beyond his execution a little bit. But then there was some marks he took where he looked 6 foot tall. Because physically, like, there's one of the things where like he's only got so much height to work with, but the way he was able to leap and use his body sometimes, just maybe 3 times across the night, I went, oh, he looks like an elite AFL footballer. Just these little glimpses. So yeah, I don't know. How do you feel?
I think right now, if you said to me, like, because he's in the last year of his contract, I think, right now I'd say like performances like the other night aren't going to earn him another contract at the Cats. He has to find a way to produce at a slightly higher level by the end of the year. Which sounds really harsh, but I think if you're looking at it and you're like, okay, do we persist here or do we move in something new? Mateo from the One Percenters had this great, which is fantastic footy blog, which you should absolutely be following, the One Percenters. I think it was the 2024 season preview. He talked about Geelong's list management, about flipping shells. Like, they're always going to churn the bottom of the list because they want to flip as many shells as they can to see if they can get something to develop, because that's what happens when you're picking not at the top end of a draft. Now, Jai Clark is a player that they did take near the top end of the draft, as high as they've taken in relatively recent memory. So he came with some pressure on him. There's signs, there's signs. And I think the thing to think about with Jai Clark is this is a player whose role is sort of changing. Like what he came into the club advertised as, which was like hard on-ball midfielder. He hasn't really grown into that. But, something he has grown into, I was just looking at his grand final stats. Doesn't jump off the page, like 14 touches, a couple of tackles, 1 clearance. But something that does jump out is 7 running bounces. And this was a stat that I'm doing some VFL prep for the podcasts upcoming for that. And he was the leader for the Cats in the VFL last year in terms of inside 50s. he is becoming a much more outside running player. He's becoming a much more, I'm going to launch attacks kind of player. A speedy kind of player. I thought you saw with his goal that he kicked that was a brilliant goal. You see it in his meters gained. He only had 11 touches of the footy and he gained 300 meters. He's a player that's changing and learning a different side of his.
Isn't that
skill
more
set,
than
like,
Warple got with 20-something touches?
Now, 1 minute, didn't you say? No?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
But it is. Yes.
I'm back in my shell.
But it
Sorry.
is. It is. It is. Look, I think there are signs. There are signs that he is finding stuff that he can build on. And honestly, I think he was going to get some games this year. To be honest, I think he's going to get some games because they're going to want to see. On the negative side, like I look at a player like Mitch Nevitt, and I think he's definitely in the red zone. He's definitely in that zone of like, if you were asking me right now to trim the list, and there was someone who said earlier in the chat he was played out of position. That's because playing in position isn't working either. Like he's been tried on a wing. He doesn't really have the mobility to play on the wing. His turning circle to play like on ball and in close is not really good enough. The thing that stands out about him most is his height and his contested overhead marking. So they've tried him up forward. If this doesn't take, I think he won't be playing on Geelong's list next year. So that's a negative thing. But as far as Jai Clark, I think we're learning that he's going to play a different role than what we initially thought. And I think there's some reason to be cautiously optimistic that maybe he will do enough to earn a contract beyond the end of this year. And the goal was a beaut. Like that was an absolute rip.
Yeah. It's not exactly un-Geelong like to have players play in a different role to what you expected them to be in.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's in good company.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Now we were going to do a look ahead to the Freo game. Paul and Ben are going to be all over that. I think I was just having a look what we've got coming up. There's going to be preview stuff coming out later in the week. So I think for now we'll just table our thoughts on that. We've done bloody hour 40 pretty much here. So yes. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. We massively, massively appreciate it. Thank you to the Patreon subscribers who support the show. You can do that too if you want to get access to the VFL coverage. And as I said, we're trying to work out technology-wise, because we're live streaming now, it's become a little bit more difficult to streamline how we do extended shows for the Patreon audience. Bear in mind, we are working towards being able to offer you the extended shows again. At the minute, it's just the VFL extra coverage. Just at the moment, while we work out how we're going to navigate doing the extended shows or additional shows for you. But thank you to everyone who's stuck around on the Patreon. We massively appreciate it. And as I said, the first VFL show, the twos, should come out later this week. Going to do a bit of a season preview looking at the list that's been announced. Tomorrow, Tuesday, you will have Enough of the Week with Paul. Wednesday, the system is in action. That is Ben with Show Us Your Tips. Get all your tipping strategies from the master. Thursday, the Paul James Show, the man himself. Friday, that's probably when the twos episode will come out, at least the public part of it for YouTube. We'll have the match preview. Saturday, we'll maybe have game day and post-game live. Sunday, a reaction, and then Monday, you'll be back to us. So thanks so much, everyone. Really appreciate it. Love doing the live shows. It's been very, very fun. As Bussy Sniffer says here, becoming a Patreon makes you more attractive to everyone. Like I can't deny it, Bussy. Like
especially to us.
Yeah.
You're much more attractive to us.
And I'll just exactly. Oka says I need a new camera. I need new internet, Oka. This is the problem.
The camera's great.
I live in the absolute boonies. I might as well be recording from a cave in Afghanistan. The connection here is pretty bloody terrible. So yeah, I apologize that I look like I'm being censored. I'm not. The internet just sucks it. So thanks everyone for sticking with us. We are gonna get out of here. Yeah, thanks for watching. Go Cats!
Go Cats!